Hi. Phase 2 had a lot more information than Phase 1 did, so I'm hoping those broad strokes were enough. If not, of course, leave your comments and I'll answer questions. This one's going to be a little bit longer because Phase 3 exploded. There were so many projects and so many new characters and so many storylines that it's going to take me a little bit longer to get through them. It will still just be broad strokes, but let's see how this goes. Kicking off Phase 3, we had Captain America Civil War, otherwise known as the one where everyone wanted to be Steve's boyfriend. The internet loves debating this movie for a lot of reasons. People claim it's the best because it was an ensemble movie, but it was very, very clearly still Steve's story. It was about Steve's relationships with everybody. Steve's relationship with Sam, Steve's relationship with Bucky, Steve's relationship with Tony, Steve's relationship with Natasha. It was Steve's movie very clearly. People love debating this movie as to, Team Cap, Team Iron Man. The only correct option is Team Cap if you watched the movie. If you watched the movie, if you read the comic book, doesn't matter. There's no way to escape that story being Team Iron Man. In the Accords that are super damaging and require super powered beings to be registered, like Jews did for the Nazis. Flip that statement. Like Nazis did for the Jews. Steve was right in the Accords. And Steve was right in not telling Iron Man that his best friend and war brother killed Tony's parents. He owes Tony nothing. He owes Tony absolutely nothing. He does, however, owe Bucky his life about 12 times over. That said, the only reason Steve knows or had an inkling is because of the things that got exploded at the end of Winter Soldier. Natasha uploaded all of Hydra's dirty laundry, so why didn't Natasha tell Tony? Why is Steve held more responsible to Tony than Natasha is? Sorry, no. Steve was 100% right. There's no way to be Team Iron Man. Continuing. Next is Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange came out in Phase 3. It was a truly terrible adaptation if you've read any of the comic books. But it was a decent enough standalone movie. The only relevant thing we get out of it is Doctor Strange now exists in the MCU. And this really proves to do nothing later, but make all of the characters around him worse. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Doctor Strange is important when we get into talking about the multiverse saga a little bit. Well, now is the multiverse saga. Next is Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and honestly, if you have time to watch the Guardians movies, you absolutely should. James Gunn filled those movies with humor and heart in equal measure, and I know Chris Pratt is just the worst Chris, but unfortunately he is so damn talented, and he shines in that movie. You also get background into the more cosmic areas of the MCU and what Eternals and Celestials are. Well, not really the Eternals, but the Celestials, which Eternals then comes along and shits all over, which is one of the reasons that movie was not good, but that's fine. Next we have Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man movie officially in the MCU canon. Honestly, MCU Spider-Man is amazing. Ignore the haters. We established the friendship between Peter and MJ and Peter and Ned. We also get a really great mentorship between Peter and Tony, and having him have that father figure interaction is really great character development for both of them. And it ends up saving the universe later. Now, the next one is Thor Ragnarok. And this movie is incredible on its own. It's a great standalone movie. We get both Thor and Loki dealing with the death of their father, becoming brothers and friends again, as well as dealing with their sister Hela, and growing into their own individual power. We also get introduced to Valkyrie, which is, of course, my favorite part of the movie. And we get to see Bruce Banner start to come to terms with the Hulk and the two sides of him and how to balance them. And then we get to Black Panther. It was a very classic, the hero and the villain want the same thing, but they have very different approaches. And I think Killmonger was one of the best MCU's best villains, air quotes, because I think the term anti-hero or antagonist would even be more accurate and work better here. It was beautiful visually, and I'll watch Lupita in literally anything. If you have time to watch it, watch it. Chadwick Boseman was incredible, and you should watch that one. Infinity War. So obviously a lot went into this one. Our heroes got into an all-out war with Thanos and his minions. The Infinity Saga has now come to a head. They could not stop him from getting all the Infinity Stones. Wanda proved that she is more powerful than the Infinity Stone, at least individually, but Vision dies anyway because Thanos has the rest of them. Thanos snapped his fingers and leaves most of our heroes dusted, leaving only the OG6 and a couple of others with a massive gaps in their hearts due to not being able to protect their loved ones. Slipping in the middle here is Captain Marvel. I think this was a really poor time to introduce her. I get that they wanted her in Endgame, and I get that there would have been fanboy outrage had they just introduced her in Endgame with no other explanation. That said, it's a good movie despite what the haters say. It was just an awkward timing thing. Carol overcomes what she was told to be. Brainwashed for her entire superpowered life, she goes to respect and acknowledge her power, and she's going to be a huge part of the MCU going forward, so watch and enjoy. Endgame was the perfect finish to a 10-year build. It called back to every single movie before it. It centered on the original 6 Avengers and allowed them and the audience to get excited for new characters while grieving the old ones. You can totally understand the movie if you have not seen all the ones before it. But that said, if you have not seen all the ones before it, it's not really for you. It was the peak of 10 years of movies. And if you haven't seen all of them, I promise you're missing something. Maybe not to the plot, maybe not to the major broad stroke story aspects, but you're missing something. You're missing the emotion, you're missing the heart. If you didn't emotionally connect with the movie and you haven't seen all the ones before it, that's why. This movie was for the people that had spent the last decade watching those movies. And if you haven't, there's nothing wrong with that. But then what I don't want to hear is, I just didn't get it. Because the reason you didn't get it, or the reason you didn't connect with it, is because it wasn't for you. If you're okay with the broad strokes, awesome. But then understand that you only have the broad strokes, and don't go around walking around like you think you're some genius film critic because you haven't seen everything before it. That said, Wanda could have totally taken Thanos all by herself. In fact, she did, and he had to sacrifice half of his army in order to get her off of him. And it didn't work. Tony finally redeems himself by taking the stones from Thanos and snapping himself, getting rid of Thanos' army, but evidently killing him. Now, everyone thinks that should be the end of that phase, but we have Spider-Man Far From Home still, and I will say that after watching it, I believe that this was the appropriate end to phase 3, because it's basically the audience. It's an opportunity for the audience and all the in-fiction characters to grieve and move on and say goodbye to not just Iron Man, but also the original era of the MCU. We get Mysterio, who reveals Peter's identity, which just sets his next movie up really good. But it does a really good job of wrapping up and tying loose ends and setting Peter up to be a good, usher into the next phase of the MCU. Sans Original 6. So that's all the big stuff. Everyone, as always, if you have specific questions, leave them below and I will be happy to answer them for you. Yeah, thank you.